Goblins, Brandon here. If you enjoy what we do and you'd like to help support us create more and maybe even take the podcast to weekly, then the best way right now that you can support us is to head over to patreon.com/goblinsgrowlers. You can find all the different stuff we do there, one-page dungeons, bonus audio for things, all kinds of stuff. So head on over there, and even if it's just $1 or, however much you're comfortable doing, or if you can't put anything toward the Patreon, just tell a friend about it. Tell somebody about the podcast. That's another great way to support us. So patreon.com/goblinsgrowlers, and we'll see y'all soon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Goblins and Growlers Podcast. I'm Josh Maltby at BlackCloakDM on Twitter and Discord.
I'm Brandon Dingus at Way of Brandalore on Discord because they forced me to change my username. So now that's what I am globally. And then also Twitter, but I rarely use it. So find me on Discord or hit me up on Instagram, where I'm also Way of Brandalore.
I was a little sad that they took away the discriminator number because I had recently set mine as I was changing to be BlackCloakDM. Mm-hmm. I had set my discriminator to be 1337. I was very pleased with myself about this. Mm-hmm. And now it's gone. Well, I'm just BlackCloakDM.
Well, you've heard it here first. Josh is pro discrimination.
Only in the mathematics sense.
Yeah, I remembered you telling me that was a thing that was coming, and I was like, good Lord, if I'm not able to claim the handle that I have everywhere else on everything, I'm going to be so upset.
I won't lie. I was a little nervous I wouldn't get BlackCloakDM because I can't imagine I'm the only one on Discord who's ever thought of using that handle. I do know the GM for the Adventure Incorporated podcast, his Discord handle is AG Reed. Mm-hmm. Because those are his initials and last name. And he said he got the name, and then a week later, he got a friend request from another A. Reed, who I think was trying to acquire his handle. And he was like, I don't think so.
I used to
know first served.
I used to know a guy who I asked him one time for his Venmo so I could, go in on a pizza or something like that. And he's like, oh, and then it's like first name, last name, _2. I'm like, does somebody beat you to that one? Like, I feel like if that's the situation, if it's just like somebody else got it ahead of you and you have to be 2, find another one.
Yeah, I don't think I'd put myself as number 2.
Yeah.
Online.
That's a shame. That's a shame. Josh, you got a nice picture of a giant leg behind you there for anybody not watching the video version of this.
It is a horse's leg. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like a grotesque autopsy photo from the way we've got it cropped.
I zoomed the crop out for people looking at the video so you can see it is in fact a horse. Mm-hmm. And it's only a little troubling when we're zoomed in close on our faces.
It's a horse? Of course.
Of course.
All right. What are we talking about today? I know you've had kind of a wild week, so we're sort of putting this together kind of quickly today because both of us have been sort of slammed by things.
Oh, my word. I will give folks the quick update that I know I've mentioned in a couple of places. Alex and I are trying to find a place. Alex and I are trying to move, all these things. We did finally put an offer in on a place. And as we were making our move out plans, we were like, hey, realtor of ours, that rent back agreement, we know we asked for a month for sure. Is it possible to extend that by like 3 or 4 days? And he goes, I didn't get the rent back agreement in. And we're like, oh no, what does that mean? And he said, that means you're moving out in 3.5 days. And we're like, oh no.
All right, wait. So did your real estate agent, did they say, oh, I was aware of the rent back agreement, but I didn't file it? Or were they saying, what are you talking about, rent back agreement?
They said, essentially, I recall us talking about this before. I did not remember to file it.
That is, there are lots of professional words I can use like negligence there.
So I am very fond of our realtor, to be clear. And I will say at the point that he was like, oh no, I've screwed up and I've screwed up badly. What he did was he went out and hired movers. He rented a storage unit, a 15 by 20, I think it is, on Midlothian.
Those are huge. I looked at one of those for our office one time.
Yeah, they're not small storage units. Or maybe it's a 10 by 15. Regardless, he rented a storage unit large enough to fit the remainder of stuff in our apartment. And then he hired cleaners to come after the movers same day. And then he came out himself in a T-shirt with gloves so that he could help the move happen, including loading stuff into his own car for us to get wherever we needed to get it.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also have an accepted offer on a house, and you're just waiting to close on that, correct?
That is correct. And he managed to work in part of closing costs being covered by the seller, among a couple of other things that Alex and I very much appreciate.
Here's the real question. And if there's actually only one correct answer to this. Since you had to move all your stuff to a storage unit and he hired movers for you, I presume that he's hiring movers a second time to get it out of the storage unit and get to your house.
I was not expecting that. If he does, it will be a pleasant surprise for me. We were planning on hiring movers to get the stuff from the storage unit to the new place in the same fashion that we were expecting to hire movers to move stuff from the first place to the second place.
I think he should offer that.
We'll see.
I
have no idea what it cost already.
A lot of money. All I'm saying, and I've talked to you about this privately before, is that not everybody has the situation where they had a place to land in that kind of foul up. So you're lucky that you did. No, he's lucky that you did.
I was going to say, I feel like we are very fortunate, and I feel like it's less of a concern to me that this happened to us, in part because I don't think it's a mistake he'll be making again at any point in the near future.
I might ask you for your realtor's name so I can put it on a list for myself of people never to call.
A block list.
Yes.
Okay. So that is the personal business. If I sound tired, that's what's going on. We moved not an entire. We'd already moved a bunch of stuff into storage for listing, but we had to move the rest of our stuff in 3.5 days. We had a bunch of friends come and help, which we really, really appreciate. And we had other friends send us DoorDash gift cards so that we could get ourselves something to keep our spirits up.
Yeah. Thanks for not asking me to come help.
We actually didn't ask anybody outright to come help. We had a bunch of people go, hey, I've got time. I know you're in a bind. If you need help, I'm here. And we took them up on it. So it was a very nice position to be in. It was very nice to feel the warm and fuzzies from our friends coming and helping bail us out of this terrible situation.
You know, I did offer you the use of my pickup truck, but I'm guessing that you're like, well, we don't need his truck, so we don't need him.
Well, when you offered the use of your pickup truck, I did not assume, and I feel like I was correct in not assuming this, that came with your physical labor.
Yeah, if for no other reason than I doubt any of you know how to drive a manual transmission.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
I have driven stick a grand total of 4 times, and all of those were before the age of 20.
Yeah. All my vehicles for the last 15 years have been stick.
I can respect it.
And I'm finally learning not to grind the clutch. It takes time. But
so that's the personal news. I spent the weekend basically just sleeping and playing video games. I feel moderately human once more.
That's good.
But in turn, Brandon and I basically, day before yesterday, were like, we should find something to talk about.
Well, I mean,
before you go to the game.
Yeah, because part of it is just the reality of like Alon and Liz and Gabe and I are going to Philadelphia on Thursday because we're part of the indie showcase for Too Many Games, which is apparently the largest video and board gaming convention in Pennsylvania. So we're very excited about that. But I was like, oh, so the new episode comes out on Monday. And so we have to do this on like Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And I'm also trying to see if I can go to a movie tomorrow night. So it needed to happen.
There was the possibility that kept floating and not floating of recording QPR stuff tomorrow night. So
yeah, which is now not happening. Yeah,
we'll get it situated.
For anybody that doesn't keep up with that, it's once a year Gabe goes off to camp for like 6 weeks because he's like a counselor at this youth camp. And we're essentially left to our own devices and have to plan a lot of extra content while he's gone to cover the gaps for it. In past years, we've reduced the release schedule. We've run like weird one-off stuff. And this year, we're just doing sort of a mishmash of things and trying to keep the release schedule standard. Because nothing's worse than like, okay, well, here's 2 weeks of bonus content, and then we're going to have 1 week of the actual campaign, and then another week of bonus, and then another week of the campaign. I hate it as much as you do. So we're trying to make things a little bit easier on people now.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, it takes a lot of organization to plan stuff like this.
It does. It takes so much organization, and editing a regular episode of QPR is quite the undertaking.
Yeah. And then I also have to take a final exam tomorrow morning.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. Technically, I have until like Saturday night to do it. But again, on Thursday morning, I'm leaving for Philadelphia. So I have to get it done.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So it becomes available at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I'm probably going to start at around 8.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
So the first 11 minutes of this episode have been us talking about personal stuff. Let's talk about TTRPG stuff.
Yeah, we should have Scott record something to stick at the beginning of this. It's like, if you don't give a shit about their personal lives, skip the time code XYZ.
Just skip to this time and you'll be good to go for the rest of the episode. Talking about our personal lives is every episode's Russian arcade.
Well, what people don't realize is Josh and I rarely get the chance to hang out. So this is us just catching up.
Oh my word. It's sad because it's mostly true.
Yeah.
So
I was actually talking to Alon yesterday, and he was like, I was talking about some various things about your home search. He's like, "What are you talking about?" He was just out of the loop on it.
I mean,
you guys are way closer than you and I are.
I feel like it's just one of those things where everything developed over the course of like a week. Mm-hmm. And so if you didn't talk to me during that week, you don't know Jack.
Yeah. It was funny because like Alon and I were like the only two people on the regular G&G business meeting call.
Oh no.
Did you forget about it completely?
I completely forgot about it.
Yeah. And it was weird.
When I say I was just playing video games and sleeping, that's literally
So we ended up being able to have a nice targeted conversation, but it was odd because normally he's the one we're having to chase down. But anyways, talking about TTRPG stuff.
So we've got 3 things to talk about today. I think probably the best one to start with is the first one I suggested, which is that I saw finally the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
and again, for clarity, Josh the other day was like, "Hey, I saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, I can watch that on Paramount Plus and we can talk about it." And then I just chose not to do it. I was like, "Yeah, I can watch it. I've got 48 hours. I can watch it." I'm like, "Oh man, this is 2 hours long." And then the way my mind was working, I was like, "Oh, that's a shame because I really should give Chris Pine another chance. I actually think he's a pretty good actor, but the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies left sort of a bad taste in my mouth about J.J. Abrams' interpretation of Star Trek. So what I ended up doing instead was watching Star Trek Beyond. So it's not it's not like those 2 hours of my life were super valuable. I just chose to spend them elsewhere.
You know what? That's okay.
Uh-huh.
Having watched it, I can say a few things. Thing number one, I did enjoy their treatment of source material. I think the story is an original one, or at the very least, if it's a module or something like that, I'm unfamiliar with it.
Well, it's a module because they wrote the module to be based on the movie.
Oh, well, that's different. I was talking about like predating the movie. I enjoyed the source material. I enjoyed the plot. I enjoyed the character interaction. They've got Chris Pine being kind of a smarmy butthole. They've got Justice Smith has actually come a long ways in his acting, which I'm pleased to say.
I'm unfamiliar with this person.
Will Smith's son.
I thought his name was Jaden. Isn't it Jaden and Willow? Or do they have 3 kids?
Do they have a 3rd kid?
I don't know.
I swear Justice Smith is Will Smith's son.
You're gaslighting me.
If I'm wrong about this, I'm going to be so upset. I'm not, you know what? I was going to start trying to look it up because I've got IMDb open over here.
Yeah.
But, oh wait, hold on. There's an expand button. Mini bio. No, it's a different Smith.
Yeah, I see nothing on their Wikipedia about Will or Jada Pinkett Smith.
I'm so confused. Well, you know what?
Well, it's a unique last name. I can understand you. I can understand you jumping to that conclusion.
There's so few Smiths in the world. That's the trouble. You know what the real issue is I had not heard another last name Smith actor in some time. It was pretty much just Will Smith and family.
Okay. Oh, this is the guy from Detective Pikachu.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he did good work there. He did, I think, quite good work here.
Now you better, you just better be careful. You know, you're talking about Will Smith's family. You never know what that knock at your door is going to be.
I didn't say anything bad about Will Smith or Will Smith's family.
You keep these allegations that I have a 3rd kid out of your damn mouth. Whap!
No. So Justice Smith did a great job. Good performer. Chris Pine did a great job. The one thing I thought was a little bit weird is that Chris Pine's clearly playing a bard, but I see him use magic at any point in the movie.
Oh, clearly he's just a beginning player.
He just plays songs. Well, it's supposed to be like mid-level adventuring party, like 6th or 7th.
Well,
based on things that are being done.
Well, he made a choice then. He was going to be more of a persuasion role and combat bard.
There's a few points where he plays songs to like cheer people up, but at no point is he playing songs and like charming people or playing songs like, I don't know.
I mean, he's Chris Pine. He can charm people just by looking at them.
It's true. It's true. Overall, really enjoyed the film. Thought it was really well done. There was a lot to enjoy. It was kind of funny because we were watching it with Alex's parents, and Alex's parents know very little about D&D. And Alex and I would be like, oh, those are the arms of Hadar. Oh, that's Greater Illusion. Oh, like...
This is like when I'm watching an episode of Star Trek Picard or Star Trek Strange New Worlds, because the showrunners for them are just such deep Trekkies these days. And they put super deep cut Easter eggs in there. So after an episode, my friend Tony and I are both on Discord like, did you see this? Did you see that? Oh yeah, I caught that.
So there was lots of that to catch. And it seemed like for the most part, things stayed within the rules. I think the one that they definitely got the fuzziest with was Wild Shapes. I was like, I don't know what level druid this is supposed to be, but I'm pretty sure you don't get 15 wild shapes in one short rest.
Were they
seems excessive.
Were they below level for like flying or swimming for their wild shape?
Based on the rest of their activity, I would say yes.
So clearly the 1 D&D wild shape rules have not reached them yet.
Exactly. Such a concern. Characters unbalanced.
Mm-hmm.
But for the enjoyment of cinema, I think it was fine. I was not against the wild shape rules being bent a little bit for the enjoyment of cinema.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun movie. I would say it would be well worth your time to spend the 2 hours to see it on Paramount Plus. Brandon, play. If you don't already have a Paramount Plus subscription, I don't know that I'd recommend getting a Paramount Plus subscription just to see it. And I think renting it, last I checked, was still like $10. So like, maybe if it's you and a group of friends are going to see it all at once, I think that'd be a lot of fun and worth $10. But if it's just you could probably hold off for a little bit longer.
No, I will say, sign up for I think you can sign up for the 30-day free trial on Paramount Plus and do that.
I thought it was a 2-week free trial.
Oh, well, it might be 2 weeks now. I don't remember, just because I've had it on autopay for a long time. But sign up for that, watch it, and then also watch season 1 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, because season 2 just premiered last Thursday, which will be 2 Thursdays ago when this episode is released. And Michelle, I think it was a big missed opportunity with Michelle Rodriguez being in that film, and with such a big D&D fan that Vin Diesel is, that he didn't have a cameo where they get together and talk about family.
Maybe they tried to make that happen and they just couldn't get his schedule to work.
I guess.
I will say, I have rarely seen Michelle Rodriguez look so stacked, because in the movie she's a barbarian character, and it's you believe that Michelle Rodriguez can pick a man up and throw him over her shoulder.
You know what I'd like to see now that we talked about this? I want to see a D&D movie with the cast of Fast and the Furious. So, like, I mean,
it sounds magical.
Yeah, like, imagine what Ludacris and Tyrese could do. Like, if they can fly a car into space in a racing movie, think what they could do in a D&D movie. So, would you rate it on a scale of I'm trying to think, because I want to do something other than just comparing it to the movie that came out 20 years ago. Speaking of Marlon Wayans.
Favorably. Yeah. Very favorably.
Yeah. But on like a scale of like, what do you think all right, let's say Return of the King is a 10, and maybe not D&D early 2000s, but all right, let's put D&D early 2000s at the number 1 slot on there. And then in the middle, you've got like Willow, you got Labyrinth, you got Lady Hawk. I feel like the Rankin Bass Lord of the Rings.
I feel like Willow deserves to be above like middle, like it should be high middle at the very least.
Well, Willow could be like an 8.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And probably a 2 is going to be Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren. A movie that I love, but I'm also honest about it.
4 can be Conan the Barbarian.
Yes. Yeah, that is best in life.
I think I would put it up for overall quality, and for me being able to be like, I think for like general audience, for whoever might come around and watch it, I think I feel comfortable putting it up near the quality of like Willow. I don't think this is a movie that's going to change anyone's life. I don't think this is the movie that like people are going to be like, oh, I watch it literally every year and I cry every time I watch it. I don't think it's got quite that level of impact, but it's high quality. The production's good. The music's good. The acting's good. The cinematography's good. Like it's all good stuff. Yeah. It all adds up to something nice. I think it can't pull off Return of the King quite, because it's not willing to take the sorts of I don't know. It feels like Return of the King is something a little more impactful because it's got a little bit stronger of a message to put across. Where this one is a fairly generic father misleads daughter and feels bad about it. And then when he comes back, she doesn't believe in him. So he has to prove it. Like, that's kind of the general vibe of the story. And so it's like...
So it's not going to develop a cult following. It's not bad. It's too good to be bad enough to develop a cult following, but it's also not good enough to be like Return of the King, where it's something that like people we know watch it every year.
Yeah, I don't think it's an all-time classic, but I would absolutely, of high fantasy movies I've seen, it would easily fall within my top 10.
Okay. All right. And of course, the shame of all this is that there's not going to be a sequel to it, I don't believe, because it had a budget of like 150 million and it only made, I think, 208 million at the box office. And, you know, the metric typically is that it has to make double its budget to break even because of the marketing costs.
So I don't know if other people have talked about this. I suspect they have, but I feel like part of your marketing campaign should not involve alienating your entire fan base about 2 months previous to your movie release.
That was a real misfire there. Yeah. I still don't think that it would have gotten them to that $300 million mark, which again is just breaking even. Because remember, like we live in a society now where if a movie doesn't make like $1 billion over the course of its run, it's considered it's not considered a failure, but it's not considered a huge success.
It's not good enough for the stockholders,
right?
So here's where I stand on that. Is I think a ton of people just in our circles, and the people in our circles don't tend to be the kind of like banging swords on shields nerds that some folk do. Just in our group, there was a lot of, I don't think I'm going to see the D&D movie because WotC has spoiled that milk for me. And these are people who were very excited about it the first time they saw a trailer. So I think if Wizards had not been like, hey, let's update the OGL 2 months before our movie release, I think this would have been very different math. Very different math.
Yeah. I honestly think, too, that being under the umbrella of Dungeons and Dragons in the title hurts this film. Because there's still a lot of folks who are like, that's just going to be like some nerdy thing that I don't want to see. I think you can have sort of the same people who casually were interested in and like to watch the Lord of the Rings on occasion, who would see this and be like, no, that's that nerdy game that my brother and his friends played, 20 years ago. I think if it had been pitched as like a fantasy movie first and Dungeons and Dragons second, it may have done the same, it may have done worse, but I think that would be a risk worth taking from a production marketing standpoint, because Dungeons and Dragons even today still conjures up a particular image when you say it, and it's one that a lot of people think is dumb. It's like if they made like, and I know jack about Magic the Gathering, right? But if it's like here's a Magic the Gathering word that I know, Innistrad. If they said let's make an Innistrad movie, it probably would make more sense to just be like, blah, Innistrad, rather than Magic the Gathering, Innistrad, the movie,
Yeah, that's fair. And you could still have this movie was inspired by the role-playing, blah, 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 blah. And then all the like D&D super nerds are like, oh, yeah, I knew it. I knew they were casting Fireball and Wild Shape and the Arms of Hadar. I knew it. I was aware all the time.
Yeah, and you don't even really have to change anything about the film. You just have to change the title and the marketing for it. Hubris is a strong word for this, but I wonder if, Wizards of the Coast was just like, we're bigger than we've ever been. So this is going to be like, Hasbro was like, let's do it. Like, it's never going to get better than this. This is the iron being hot. Let's make it happen. And then it was sort of the twin issues of, like you said, they completely bent themselves over with that whole OGL thing at the beginning of the year, completely undercutting the narrative in the final two months before the movie comes out. And then also just like Dungeons and Dragons.
Maybe.
I think they overestimated the amount of support, the amount of audience that just that name would get them. Because, I mean, like, I'm probably a prime example of that too, right? It's like, oh, it's the D&D movie. Like, by any reasonable metric, I should have gone to see that movie in the theater, right? I can't even be bothered with 48 hours notice to watch it on a streaming service in my home. And, you know, if I'm honest, some of that does have to do with WotC and the OGL stuff, and just generally the way WotC's comported themselves over the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
It's kind of obnoxious. I'm not going to pretend that I'm high-minded enough that's why I didn't go see it, because that would be me lying to myself, to you, and to everybody listening to this. But, you know, it's certainly something I thought about. Like, I'm not going into it like, well, I don't want to give them any of my damn money, because, like, you know, you're giving them money if you're, you know, subscribed to Paramount Plus to watch it, you know? So I don't know. It definitely did better than the first Dungeons and Dragons movie. But this probably means that we're looking at maybe 10 years before we see another one. I think time moves a lot faster now than it used to. So I don't think we're going to see a 20-year gap in this. You know, it might be smart. It might be smart for them for like, well, let me think. Like, you know, something like Critical Role, right? Like the television series for that, the animated series for that, pretty popular, pretty successful. I think that might be a way that they should go to sort of push this kind of thing out into sort of more mainstream media. It's hampered, I think, by being on Amazon Prime, but you know, I think they could make a theatrical animated film out of that, release it, and it would do pretty well. Like, it would be sort of like just maybe like a level under Rick and Morty in terms of the kind of adult appeal there. We're well outside the scope of the conversation right now. I'm just thoughts are coming into my head and leaving my mouth at the exact same time. So anyway,
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand completely. Long story short, I enjoyed the film. If you like high fantasy movies, whether or not you are keen on the concept of Dungeons and Dragons, it's a good high fantasy movie. It's nothing, I think, that's going to be a timeless classic, but it is something that I think is fun enough to sit the family down and watch it as a group and have a good time with it.
Yeah, and speaking of the year two, it came out. The first one came out December 8th, 2000. So it is almost 23 years old. To put the budget in context for that, the budget for that movie was $45 million. You can do your own inflation adjustment for it, because you'll see why that doesn't matter in a minute. And the box office for it was $33.8 million. So yeah, so it lost like $11-12 million. Which, you know, the inflation percentage does not matter since it was a loss.
I mean, $12 million in 2000 is a hefty chunk of change.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the cast list for it, and I don't know who many of these people are.
Well, like, clearly they went on to have really, really powerful careers that you just don't follow.
Yeah, there's Tom Baker, there's Jeremy Irons, there's Marlon Wayans, and Justin Whalen, who was the lead in it. I remember his face, but I could not tell you a thing that he was in as an actor.
I feel like I've seen him in other things. I just can't think of what.
Oh, okay. He was Jimmy Olsen in Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, back in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I know him from. He quit acting in 2009. That's why, according to Wikipedia.
Oh.
So that's why. He's now working as a social studies drama teacher at the Learning Castle in LA.
Well, that's nice that he got to continue, using his acting skills for the good of others.
Yeah. Oh, and he was in Mr. Belvedere in 1989. He was in Charles in Charge as well, which gives him a connection to Bible Man, because that actor who was the voice of the Ranger in the D&D animated series we learned was also a regular on Charles in Charge.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
I don't know how long we're going to keep going back to Bible Man. I don't know if this is one of those we're going to have to watch a few episodes and then talk about Bible Man as an item on GGP in order to get it out of our systems.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know what the cure is, but we'll have to find it at some point.
Yeah.
It is amazing how we keep coming back to it.
I'm putting an embargo on all Bible Man related content on this podcast for at least a period of 12 months.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Do you think we can uphold that?
Well, I think if we can make it through the next 3 days without it coming back, then we'll be okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll make it.
Yeah.
So other news items. Ooh. Let's talk about...
We spent so much time on that.
Listen, we have opinions. That's why we do this show.
In my case, uninformed opinions about the D&D movie. We're podcasters. Uninformed opinions are our bread and butter.
At least we're honest about our uninformed opinions.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that news that came out regarding NuTSR filing. Was it Chapter 7 Bankruptcy?
Yeah, it was Chapter 7 Bankruptcy, which is the bankruptcy. There's Chapter 11, there's Chapter 13, Chapter 11, and Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is shutdown and liquidation. Chapter 11 is reorganization. Most of the time when you hear that a business, especially a large business, has filed bankruptcy, typically they're filing Chapter 11, which puts a pause on creditor collections to let them sort of reorganize everything. And many businesses successfully emerge from bankruptcy and go on to be successful. And then Chapter 13 is essentially like the personal equivalent of Chapter 11. So like if you're just a person filing bankruptcy. But yes, they filed Chapter 7.
If you're a person restructuring your organization,
mm-hmm.
You're like, hey, listen, I've decided I should not be in charge of my finances, which is why I'm bringing in my mother.
Yeah, unfortunately, in Chapter 13, you still have to be responsible for your finances. It's the first step toward being responsible for your finances. And it only affects your ability to purchase a house for 2 to 4 years, depending on the type of loan you get. Hashtag mortgage loan originator.
So Brandon and I started talking about NuTSR filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is the kind of bankruptcy you liquidate from, as Brandon just said. And something that Brandon had been completely unaware of, but I learned because I spend too much time on the internet, is that one of the owners of NuTSR, Justin LaNasa, owns a chain of tattoo parlors in North Carolina.
Huh.
And unfortunately, Brandon pointed out, he was like, NuTSR is probably an LLC, which means his other assets are probably protected. But there is a non-zero chance that because of the ongoing lawsuit proceedings with Wizards of the Coast, which are currently on hold because of the Chapter 7 bankruptcy proceedings,
mm-hmm.
there's a non-zero chance that some judge somewhere says, you know what? No, you do in fact still owe Wizards of the Coast money in spite of your Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And we're going to have to collect that through material assets. And Wizards of the Coast ends up owning a tattoo parlor in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Perhaps a chain of tattoo parlors. Just for anybody who might be unfamiliar, because this does sort of walk the line for inside baseball in tabletop stuff. Give them sort of the executive summary of what's going on here.
So, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, so you've already heard.
Yeah, and I will say, if you subscribe to the Goblins and Growlers Gazette, our monthly newsletter, the issue that was just distributed today, June 20th, has a news item in it about all this with links to various things like a timeline of the entire NuTSR saga. I think that I found on EN World or Dicebreaker or something like that. So Josh, since I know you subscribe, you can just go to your email and get that.
I'm not going to go to my email and get that. I thought I subscribed. Did I subscribe? Brandon, I don't know anything anymore. The last week has burned all knowledge from my database.
Yeah. Well,
I'm like a starship that has had its ion cannons reversed too many times.
Mm-hmm.
Too many times.
Yeah. Well, no worries, because I can help you out here.
What I can say as a brief executive summary, we have talked about NuTSR on the podcast before. I am not going to recant exactly what is inside their version of, what is it? It's Star Frontiers?
Yeah, just suffice it to say, it's racist and transphobic stuff.
It's so bad. It's so bad, you guys.
If anybody listening to this has ever read maybe an anthropological textbook from sometime before 1974, expect the same kind of terminology to show up in Star Frontiers.
Yeah, and also expect a lot of people who are Norse with blonde hair and blue eyes, they're going to be the best people, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It's no, not like this, y'all. No. So that is the general vibe of the sort of stuff they were putting out. They were trying to claim that Wizards of the Coast had abandoned a bunch of IP, and Wizards of the Coast had not at all abandoned any of that IP,
because they were still selling it on online in PDF form, right? Yeah.
And on top of that, they were, even if they hadn't been selling those copies online, the way is the copyright or the trademark? I always get these backwards. I think it's the copyright. The way it worked is they still had time to do something more substantial with it. NuTSR really just wanted existing IP to play with, and so they decided to grab some and start playing with it. And then Wizards was like, you need to stop. And NuTSR was like, make us. And Wizards of the Coast's lawyers were like, okay. That lawsuit didn't fully get off the ground before this Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing. So those proceedings are on pause until after the bankruptcy, which I presume if they liquidate the entire company and vanish into the night, Wizards of the Coast does not pursue them at that point, provided that means they stop trying to produce Wizards of the Coast IP.
Well, I mean, they're like the only outcome of a successful Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing is the dissolution of the company and the liquidation of its assets. And as we saw in the bankruptcy filing, they have total assets of like $621 and some change versus a total liability of like almost $400,000.
Yeah,
which is there's no coming back from that. Now, what I think you're talking about is the possibility that Ernie Gygax and Justin LaNasa, because they were doing business as like Dungeon Hobby Shop LLC, just incorporate a new company and try this all over again. Because okay, that company was bankrupt. Like obligatory. I am not a lawyer, but as I understand it, because the debts were against the LLC, and as long as they are not going after personal assets to help satisfy any of this, they can just spin up another LLC and just get right to it. Which wouldn't surprise me if they did, because I feel like Ernie Gygax is like, well, my last name is Gygax, so we can just start this again, which would be like for a third time at this point. It's ridiculous. I'm looking at the timeline that I found, and them doing Star Frontiers New Genesis, which was the one that they were trying to publish. A guy named Michael Hovermail was hired as their like PR person and worked there for like 6 months. And then on January of last year, he claimed that the first edition of their Star Frontiers New Genesis was released and has sold out, and said, quote, "It was a very small limited run released and sold on the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum website. It's no longer available and probably won't be reprinted." And then after that, the person putting the timeline together says, "As yet, nobody has publicly revealed that they bought a copy." So most likely they just manufactured this idea that it was sold at all. They might have, that might be where the $621 came from.
I was going to say maybe they printed 5 copies and sold them to the principals in the business.
Yeah. Well, 3 days after Hovermail made that announcement, he resigned as the chief creative officer and PR officer of what they're calling TSR 3, because there have actually been 2 new TSRs, and it's very complicated, and I don't want to get into it. Yeah.
I don't like it. So basically, what I'm trying to say is Wizards of the Coast's legal proceedings are on the fact that Justin LaNasa and Ernie Gygax think they have any rights to Star Frontiers.
Mm-hmm.
If they dissolve this business, but try to maintain that they do in fact still have rights to Star Frontiers, the Wizards of the Coast's lawsuit goes forward. So the smartest thing they could do right now is dissolve their business and vanish into the night. But I think we have seen time and time again, neither of these individuals is particularly interested in doing the smartest possible thing. They are more interested in trying to make a point and showing woke folks that they don't know what they're talking about or something. I don't know. They're trying to stick it to the lefties. I don't, whatever.
I don't even think it's a stick it to the lefties kind of thing. I think it is, they fundamentally see this hobby as something different, and they want to be able to express the way they see it. And if that pisses off the left, then that's great. I don't think they're doing it out of spite. I think they're just doing it, and they love the fact that it's spiting people. Which is maybe a distinction without a difference.
I got the distinct impression from some of their posts, comments, things like that, that they didn't care for this new, inclusive language inside of tabletop RPGs and things like that. And they wanted to go back to the old days when orcs were evil and drow were evil and...
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about the same thing. I don't disagree with any of that. I don't think they're approaching it from a mentality of, well, you know what? We're going to put this out just to spite them. I think they're just this is how we think the game should be because this is how we enjoyed it. Maybe LaNasa, because I think we've left out that he was a failed Republican candidate for at least one office. So, yeah, I'm painting with a broad brush. What are you going to do? But, maybe he feels that way. But it just doesn't make any sense to operate. If they're operating from spite, none of this makes sense. Because, you don't spite your way into a $400,000 debt that you have to, file Chapter 7 on.
If the assumption was that they would create enough heat and anger that they would get a bunch of GOP support and then a bunch of people would flock to their aid. I mean, there's a lot of really terrible Republican products out there that get a lot of support just for being Republican-based products.
Yeah, but also this is a niche within a niche within a niche. It's a tabletop.
Yes.
It's a tabletop role-playing game. It's a tabletop role-playing game that's not D&D, that's set in space. It's a tabletop role-playing game that's not D&D, that's set in space, that is being printed and distributed by a couple of very conservative people with very narrow social views, right? You have to go down so many layers on that. And, they say there's riches in the niches, but I think this demonstrates that there's always an exception to that.
I think if you're looking for the riches in the niches, you need to also be comfortable with the concept that your audience could and should be anyone and not a specific subset of folks, such as grognards.
Yeah, this is an example of niches get stitches.
Yes, precisely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I want to keep deliberating NuTSR because they spiked my blood pressure so bad.
Yeah, they're bad folks with bad opinions.
They made bad business decisions.
Yeah,
to file bad bankruptcy.
Yeah, very bad bankruptcy. This would be a whole different discussion if they were filing Chapter 11. Like there would be a lot to chew on there if that were the case.
Yeah, yeah. And there's still, I would say, a little bit to chew on there because just because they're filing Chapter 7 doesn't mean they're making good choices.
No,
as part of that.
I can almost guarantee you that they're not making good choices. All right, you want to move on to the next thing?
Yeah, let's turn to our final item of the week, which is a little something that turned into a bit of a flurry, at the very least on Twitter.
It was very weird. It was very weird.
I think part of the confusion Brandon and I experienced was that we followed the person who was kind of like live reporting on the situation, and they kept saying Facebook, and either the person they were talking about put it up and then took it down, or they never meant Facebook in the first place and they just meant Kickstarter updates.
Mm-hmm.
But I got rid of the Twitter thread. It was Sprinting Owl Designs.
Yeah, it was Sprinting Owl Designs.
I recalled it.
Yes. I'm gonna send it to you over Discord.
Sprinting Owl Designs. I closed Discord. Your Discord will do me no good.
I'll send it to you in private chat.
Sprinting Owl Designs posted a Twitter thread talking about how a designer that they've worked with before, being the Polyhedral Knights, was receiving a C&D from Renegade Game Studios, the company behind such titles as the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game, G.I. Joe. Aren't they doing
Transformers, My Little Pony?
Transformers, My Little Pony. I was going to say My Little Pony. I'd forgotten about Transformers briefly.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the ones who've been doing all of those titles. They sent a C&D to Polyhedral Knights because Polyhedral Knights had a Kickstarter running for their game Renegade City. And I could see a certain Rockstar Studios being like, hey, what do you think you're doing? But I don't think Renegade Game Studios has a leg to stand on with that.
Well, let's talk about Renegade City for a second. So Renegade City is the product that precipitated this whole thing, and Polyhedral Knights, a very small game design publishing studio. They've got a handful of games out. They did a Kickstarter for this game called Renegade City. It was a very small Kickstarter. It finished up like a few days, I think, before we recorded this, but it had 61 backers and raised about $3,700. So it was a very, very small scale kind of thing. What I'm imagining is it's really just a book that they're printing. No extra stuff. But the long and short of it is it's called a modern day anti-hero criminal role-playing game, tabletop RPG. So it's basically GTA as a TTRPG, right? The art style that they're using on the Kickstarter, and we'll put a link to this in the show notes and everything, looks exactly like sort of the cell shaded art that you would see on the loading screens on like every GTA that's come out in the last 20 years. It's interesting.
The font they chose is a very similar font.
No, I mean, it's not a similar font. It is the font for Grand Theft Auto.
Is it?
Yes.
I didn't know it was exactly the same.
No,
I knew it was.
It's exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah. And fun fact, and we'll get into this. Well, I'll just go ahead and get into it now. One of the things that it sounds like that Renegade Game Studios was trying to say to Polyhedral Knights about Renegade City when they sent the C&D is like, Rockstar might be mad at you for how much this looks like GTA, which is weird because they didn't really have standing to say that. But also a fun little bit of trivia there is, Bob Barker might as well have sent them a C&D because Rockstar used the same font as the Price is Right font for GTA.
That's amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah, look up Price is Right font and compare that to Grand Theft Auto. It's the same. It's literally the same font. In this thrilling bit of audio, Josh Googles images of the Price is Right logo.
Oh my God, it is. That's amazing.
Yeah. And the thing about Renegade City is it seems like the mechanics of it are very different too, because it's not a dice-based RPG, it's domino-based, which was enough to interest me because I'm also working on sort of like a domino-based game. So I was really interested in learning a little bit about this. So I'm kind of glad this happened because it brought it to my attention, and I've sent them an email seeing if I can find out some information and get like a review copy of it. But if I'm Renegade Game Studios, well, no. Let me not say that. If I'm an observer here, if I'm an objective observer looking at this from 1,000 feet, I don't understand how Renegade Game Studios is like, well, they're using the word Renegade in a single product that they're releasing, whereas we, Renegade Game Studios, have not released a single product called Renegade. We're, in fact, making most of our money off of licensed titles like Vampire the Masquerade, Transformers, Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, etc. And, they say that in terms of like protecting IP, you have to be really overzealous about it. You have to send these C&Ds. It's like your legal responsibility, because if you can't demonstrate that you've been actively trying to protect your trademark, that is ammunition later if somebody says you've abandoned it. So on one hand, I can see why they sent this out there, but on another hand, it also doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me. This is probably a question for noted Dungeons and Dragons lawyer, Noah Downs. But it's really weird. It's really weird because they finally, after all this came out, it was just kind of a question for a couple days. And now if you go to the Renegade City page on Polyhedral Knights website, there's a line at the top that says this game is not affiliated in any way with, sponsored by, or connected to Renegade Game Studios LLC, which obviously was just put in there in the last little bit. And if you go to the updates on the Kickstarter, it actually talks about it a little bit. Because where Sprinting Owl Design was like, oh yeah, they put this on their Facebook. Like, we looked on their Facebook, it's not there. It's in the updates section of their Kickstarter. So I don't know where all that came from. But it says, this was from today, actually, June 20th. And it says, in order to keep the Renegade City name and not go through an unnecessary legal battle, which me, not as a lawyer, think you would win, we agreed to post this on our page here and on our homepage. I'll also be adding it to our published book, the following statement. And then it says, this game is not affiliated in any way, blah, 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 blah. And then it says, thanks again for everybody's support. Now let's get this awesome game finished and in your hands. But going through the Sprinting Owl thing, it's just so crazy to listen to this, to read this update. It's like, I talked to the lawyers representing, and this is from, I guess, the owner of Polyhedral Knights. It's like, hey, everyone, good news. I talked to the lawyers representing Renegade Game Studios. There seems to be a misunderstanding, and once we talked, we both saw each other's side on a few points. I gave them some assurances that I wasn't trying to poach business from them, and that we're not looking to get in any trouble for us having similar art to another IP, which he's referring to Grand Theft Auto there. Once we pointed out that we share an art style, which can't be copyrighted or trademarked, and a similar publicly commercial font with a certain IP, which is the GTA/Price is Right font, and that's all, they seemed a little bit more at ease. Turns out they will be okay with us using the Renegade City for this game name, so please go easy on these guys. They didn't know and are better informed. And I think that right there is sort of key, because everything I've looked at as we've been talking about this over the last day or two, it just seems that it was almost sort of a reflexive C&D sent out by Renegade Game Studios rather than anything with any like thought. Because I think a lot of these C&Ds go out just at the drop of a hat, and most people are like, oh shit, I got a C&D, I better stop doing this. And it's a really sort of like low cost way for folks to defend their IP. So honestly, probably the lawyer for Renegade Game Studio, because I don't think they have a team. I'm willing to be proven wrong on that.
Well, this person did say lawyers representing Renegade Game Studios.
I don't know.
It could very well be like Alan and Alan, and the second Alan is a sock puppet. I don't know, but like,
keep in mind that Alan and Alan in Richmond, there's like 50 Allens on that sign.
I think it's Alan, 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 and Alan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
I just like how Polyhedral Knights sort of gets this dig in there of like, hey, go easy on them. They didn't know any better. Like, oh, they're just our dumb cousin. They're from the country. They don't know our city ways. And like, and then he ends with, "We're all brothers and sisters in the gaming world. We need to play nice on the playground. Thanks again for everyone's support. That means a lot to me." And then it just goes into more commentary from Sprinting Owl. Like, I'm not sure what conclusions to reach from this. And like, it feels like they maybe got skittish over the negative buzz. I don't understand what would have been Renegade Game Studios' problem if Rockstar had taken issue with Polyhedral Knights game, and why they felt the need to intervene on those grounds. Unless it possibly, now this is interesting, unless it possibly means that Renegade Game Studios is working on a GTA licensed RPG, although that feels so far in the realm of speculation that it's a dot on the horizon. Now, I think that's giving Renegade way too much credit. I think if they were working on a GTA RPG, we would know it now.
Yeah, we would be conscious of it, and they'd probably have it officially licensed.
Yeah.
That's kind of their thing. It's kind of what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just feels to me like a reflexive, uninformed C&D that didn't really understand the nuances of everything. So I don't know. It's really weird. Look, I had never heard of Polyhedral Knights before, but I went to their website. They've got Renegade City on there. They've got a handful of games: Pirates of a Shattered World, Wasteland Sagas, Dark Times, etc. I'll definitely poke around with it. The site is copyright somebody named John Barfield. I'm presuming that they are the owner and or leader of the situation. But I'm interested to see what this game is like, because it looks like they're not necessarily like new kids on the block in terms of publishing and stuff like that. Like, I'm looking at some of the books they released, and I see several other commercially available fonts that I have used in some of our publications. So hopefully we don't get a C&D from them for anything. But yeah, this was really weird. It was really sort of a tempest in a teapot sort of situation, but it was just funny enough. And there was just enough that like didn't connect that we were like, does this make any sense to you? Because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Well, and at the point that you and I were looking at it, it was before the resolution. So it was like,
yeah,
what does Renegade Game Studios think they're doing exactly? Especially since at the time, this person, like at the time that this guy received the C&D, their Kickstarter was less than 12 hours from completion.
Mm-hmm.
And they funded, because their goal was 3,000, they got 3,700. They were ready to start like working on production and everything like that. And then they get this C&D, and it's like, well, shoot.
That actually happened to a product I backed on Kickstarter, 5 or 6 years ago. It was a really simple little combat card game that was originally called Skirmish. And they got hit with a C&D from somebody who had created another card game called Skirmish. So,
no.
So they had to change it. They ended up changing it to Skirmish, which like by pure coincidence happened to also be like an old English word for a battle or something like that.
Hell yeah.
So the guy was like, oh, okay, all right, well, we're just going to do this. Like, it's close, and also it has the added benefit of also being accurate. But it felt like that was very secondary to what they were going for.
I love it when these things work out.
But, talking a little bit more about Renegade Game Studios, like some of you may remember my less than charitable review from about almost a year and a half ago at this point on the core rulebook for the Power Rangers game. And the history there was like, it was pitched up until like 4 months before it came out as a fully 5e system. And then it came out and they changed. It was not a 5e system. It looked like a system that they put together in 4 months for reasons I do not understand. And I was really disappointed, not necessarily with the mechanics of the system, but it didn't give me what I wanted from a Power Rangers RPG. Like I wanted to be able to create my own powers, create my own Zords and that kind of thing. And it also did the old Pathfinder way of doing things where they were releasing essentially multiple books to get all the character classes, which really frustrates me. And so I sort of put it in a box in my head and hadn't worried about it for a long time. And then while we were researching this, I went back and looked, and they've released one more, or actually they're getting ready to release another Power Rangers supplement book called Across the Stars that looks like it, I'm looking at the cover of it. It deals with, Power Rangers in space. I see Trekina on the cover from Lost Galaxy. I see the Gold Ranger. I see one of the Psycho Rangers, SPD, and an Omega Ranger and stuff. So they're getting into, and then it's got 3 more character classes in it. So that looks interesting. And then that's coming out in July. And then they've got Power Rangers, A Jump Through Time, which doesn't even have cover art yet, but they've got a listing for it. And it is dealing with stuff like Time Force and RPM. But that's coming out in November. So it sounds like they're chugging along with that. It might be time for me to take another look at some of this stuff and maybe get another source book and take a look at it. And then there's also like the Angel Grove adventure book that came out like right after. But my experience with that Power Rangers core rule book was what sort of soured me on checking out the G.I. Joe and the Transformers books, because I think there were stories that it was all going to be working with the same system, and I just wasn't in love with the system. But maybe if I go back and check it out now, there's like more options to play with there, and you can maybe cobble together something that would work sort of more how I wanted it to work.
I remember your opinion being fairly distinctly, it feels like you tried to break away from 5e without letting go of 5e.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating in any system where it's like, oh yeah, we started out 5e, but we decided to do our own thing. And it's like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. You maintained 80% of 5e. You did the, can I borrow your homework? Sure, but make sure it looks different. Like TTRPG design.
Yeah, like let's make it harder. Let's make it harder on people to adopt this, And, I know there's, rightful shit to give wizards about the way they do things. But like at the end of the day, like if you want a system that's accessible to people, 5e compatible is probably the path of least resistance for you there, especially if it's Hasbro products. That's the thing that I don't understand. Like, I don't understand that at all.
Right. It's not like you're breaking away from Hasbro. So why would you be like, oh, we've got to change it? If you were to say it's not suiting what we need it to make everything work, so we have to do our own system, as it turns out, that would make some sense. And that's what they said on the cover.
But it doesn't play out that way.
No, it's still too much 5e to be anything but 5e with adjustments.
Like if they really wanted to make it simple, they would have done something with like probably more akin to like PBTA and had it as like a D6 system. And then for your archetypes, that's your different ranger colors for it.
Yeah.
And it would also be more versatile to be able to build your own archetypes easily and probably do the same thing with Zords in that respect. Like you just have to build a template for it. So yeah, it's to this day that still confuses me. I would love to talk to somebody who can explain why that was done that way, like the real reason and not the bullshit reason that they published.
Going back to Polyhedral Knights, we did look at a little bit of the game basics for Renegade City, and the way it uses dominoes is kind of fascinating because it's your skill is a meet or below, and as long as you can pull a domino that's got meet or below, you get success. If you get a domino that's got doubles on it and you get a success, you get a little bit of like an extra effect on that success. And then if you get a blank tile, that's a critical success. It's as successful as you can be with as good of additional effects as you can get. And so it's kind of a neat little system for handling that sort of stuff without having dice on hand. I think the one thing Brandon pointed out that I hadn't really thought about was that they have their set of dominoes is the Boneyard, and it's unclear looking at that basic set of rules that we saw whether or not the Boneyard is shared by all players or if everybody's got their own.
Yeah, because a standard set of 6 dominoes has 28 tiles, and if you've got like 6 people playing, that's a lot. And just the reason I bring that up is because one of the things on the Polyhedral Knights website that they say is like they're committed to building like simpler, more accessible games. And it's sort of the same philosophy I have of like trying to focus on things that people already have, like D6s or playing cards or dominoes or something like that for your game accessories. So just the idea that they would require people to have like a ton of sets of dominoes. Now, granted, I was just at Walgreens today, and you can get a set of 6 dominoes for like $9. So
I was literally just trying to look up what would it cost me to buy some dominoes, and for even like, oh, you want to put a 6-6 set of dominoes in a really nice backgammon type case, then it'll be $90. And I'm like, that seems excessive. But then there's like a wooden case with fairly standard dominoes. It's like $25.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
I bought a set of 18s so I could do some sort of like prototyping and experimentation, and it was like $20, and it came in a little case that snaps shut. But there's friggin' tons of them though. Because like dominoes increase like exponentially the further up you go.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
But yeah, I reached out to Polyhedral Knights today to ask them if we could get like a review copy of Renegade City. Really, I just want to kind of check out what the domino mechanics are like and see how that plays. But if they get back to us and they're willing to throw us PDFs to talk about, we'll certainly talk about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, unless we just discover something terrible about them, in which case we won't.
It turns out that Renegade City is being published by terrible people.
Yeah.
Terrible people that have done terrible things.
Now, having said that, if we end up actually never doing a review of anything they've ever done, do not take that to automatically mean we discovered they were terrible people.
Look, the sheer fact of the matter is that if we don't hear from them, we don't hear from them. If we find out they're terrible people, we will be announcing that on the podcast because we've spent a lot of time in this episode talking about their product. Yeah. And in theory, getting folks interested in looking at their product.
Yeah. Oh, and we talked about Longshot City like last episode very briefly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I reached out to them, to Melsonian Arts Council, and I was like, yo, can we get a PDF to review? And they responded fairly immediately and were like, yes, give us your email address. And then I sent it to them, and then I never got an email from them. And then I followed up about 6 days later and said, hey, did this message get lost, or are you just not going to do it? It's fine either way. I just don't want to look for something that's not going to happen. And then I didn't get any response to that. So I don't think that's happening. But their Kickstarter did just go live like yesterday. So, maybe they're busy. I don't know.
I'll tell you, it's really busy.
I'll tell you one thing I asked for a review copy of, and we got the Adventurer's Guide to the Bible, the 5e compatible setting for it. Because I had heard all kinds of different stuff on both ends of the spectrum about it. So I wanted to check it out for myself, reached out to them. They were like, absolutely. Like the main person behind it, like teaches theology at a university or something like that. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they sent me a PDF version of it. And then the other day I got a shipping notification in my email from DriveThruRPG. And I was like, what the hell is this? I've not bought anything from DriveThruRPG. And they're sending me a physical copy of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll talk about that once I get it and have a chance to take a look at it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah. So are we ready to wrap up?
Yeah, I think we're beyond ready to wrap up. This actually ran longer than I thought it would. I was
I know. You were like
a solid 30 or 40 minutes.
I knew you were being unrealistic when you said that.
30 minutes later.
Yeah. All the usual stuff. The best way to support us is to give us 5-star reviews and telephone, telegraph, tell a friend about the Goblins and Growlers podcast, because word of mouth is very useful because you're vouching for us and we appreciate it. We try not to be bad folks. So as long as you don't think we're bad folks, tell your friends that we're not bad folks and that they should listen to us.
You, our supporters, are our most powerful advertising platform we could ever sponsor.
As Captain Planet says, the power is yours. By the time you hear this, I'll already be back from Too Many Games, but we're debuting a couple of cool things up there that will be up on the Goblins and Growlers Big Cartel store, hopefully in the next couple months. Look for some, hopefully, biggish news related to some of that stuff before the end of the year that I don't want to get into now. But people are free to read between lines if they want to. And also, an old favorite has returned to the online store. We've got our custom character sheets that are done for the 12 core classes in 5e. They're all hand-drawn by our wonderful artist friend, Liz, the Artificer, on Instagram. And there will be a link in the description to her Instagram and also to the store. And for those of you watching on video right now, go to that link that's right there on the screen. So there's that. I have a lot of other merch that needs to go up on the online store, and it's just not there yet because I'm only one person and I have a bunch of stuff to do. So I'm doing the best I can, but be patient. And whenever something new is added to the store, it gets included in that month's newsletter. So be sure and subscribe to the newsletter. We'll put the subscription situation in the show notes, and you can also get there through our link tree, linktr.ee/Goblins and Growlers. But yeah, Josh, do you have anything?
I think the only thing you haven't hit already is that if you like talking nerd stuff and you want to talk about more nerd stuff, or pop into the GGP channel and tell us about all the ways in which our opinions are wrong, you can join the conversation on our Discord at bit.ly/Goblin Discord.
I'm always interested in hearing about how my opinion is wrong.
I have yet to block anyone in our Discord for making me too sad, and it would be a shame to start that immediately. But I'm willing to hear people out, at least initially.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's maybe through discussion we'll determine that their opinion was wrong.
Aha!
It's a chance to turn the tables. But
through reasoned discourse, we found that it was in fact the children who were wrong.
Yes. Don't ask them. Trust me on this. So it's about 20 to 11 now, so we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I guess we'll hear from you in 2 weeks. We don't know what we'll talk about yet, but I'm sure something will manifest.
Oh, always. Something always manifests.
Yeah. If there's something that you would like for us to manifest as a conversation, bit.ly/Goblin Discord, and let us know.
Oh, absolutely. We love audience sourced topics because we know you're interested in those.
We also love audience sourced topics because it reduces our workload. We'll catch everybody in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening.
Bye, y'all. If you like what you hear, consider subscribing and giving us a review over on Apple Podcasts. Especially early in the feed, subscriptions and reviews are super helpful for bringing new listeners our way. Thank you.